Hey guys, today we're in the book of Leviticus chapter 12. Now, if you remember, the first 7 chapters are about ritual sacrifices. Chapters 8 through 10 are about the priest being ordained. And now we're in this new section from 11 to 15, and it's all about ritual purity. It's all about the word purity. How do you purify yourself? And so today it's a short chapter, but it might seem a little weird. And I just want to make sure you take away the right thing when you read chapter 12. Right? So chapter 12 is all about what should a woman do after childbirth? How will she be made pure again, right? Because remember, blood is the life source, right? It's what gives us life. And so during pregnancy, there is a spilling of blood. And so because there is a spilling of blood, that is what makes a person unclean. So there has to be some kind of purification, and God gives it to us in chapter 12. And really, there's only 2 things that happen here, right? There's what happens with the birth of a male son, and what is done after the birth of a female daughter, right? So male, female. And there are 2 different things, right? With the male, you have 7 days. And then after that, you have 33 days. With the daughter, everything doubles. You have 14 days, and then you have 66 days. So the total for the male is 40 days. The total for a female is 80 days. Now, why is this? Well, you got to understand the whole point of this, right? The whole point is to be pure. What is there pure? And if you know, at the end, it talks about that they would bring a lamb or a dove, or if you were poor and you couldn't afford a lamb, you would bring 2 pigeons or 2 turtle doves, and there would be a burnt offering and a sin offering, right? Now remember what we've learned. A burnt offering can completely consume a fragrance to God, right? It's kind of, thank you, I love you, this is right. The other one is a sin offering. There's sin to be atoned for. Now, it's not a sin to have a child, right? We see even all the way back in the garden where there was no sin, God said, be fruitful and multiply. That's what God wanted us to do. And He's still what He wants us to do. So it's not a sin to have a child. So what's the sacrifice for? What are they making an atonement for? The understanding is that when you have a son, you're bringing a human into this world, and they are born into sin. So there's 7 days, and then after that 7 days, there's 33 days, right? 7th day, the mom is unclean. On the 8th day, the boy would be circumcised, and for 33 days, from the 8th day to the 40th day, then they have this period where they're unclean. Then they make an atonement. They brought that boy into the world, and that boy is going to sin. He was born in sin, and he will continue to sin as he grows up. So they start his life with an atonement. Now, when you look at a girl, you might think when you read this that God doesn't approve the birth of a girl, or a girl is worse than a boy. And that's not the fact at all, right? It's not even on the spectrum of what God is thinking. We read this and we think, well, because the boys, right, if you have a mom and she has a boy, it's 40 days, and a girl, she has 80 days. So apparently it takes more to be with a girl. The whole idea behind this is what? It's purity, right? The whole thing is purity. That's the section that we're in. So if a mom has a boy, she needs 40 days, and then she brings a sacrifice and atones for his sins. When she has a girl, she needs longer, right? 66 days plus the 14, so a total of 80 days. And then she atones. Now, remember, it's the same sacrifice, whether for a boy or girl. But you might wonder, why is it longer for a girl? Well, what's the atonement for? The mom brings in a boy, he's born into sin, he's going to sin, the atonement is there. But when a mom brings a girl in, right, she is born into sin just like the boy. She's going to sin just like the boy. But in the future, that girl will also bring in another person that is going to be born into sin and will sin, right? If you have a boy doesn't birth another person. So kind of the sin stops there, right? For a girl, it comes in and it's the girl's sin that's born, but later when she gets older and she gets married and she is fruitful and multiplies, she will bring another child in. And if it's a girl, then she would do the exact same thing. So it's not that the girl is more sinful. It's not that the girl has more sin. But the whole idea of sacrificing during a pregnancy is because of what they were born into. And you might ask yourself still, like, but why longer? Why 40 days for a boy, 80 days for a girl? Well, you gotta understand, right? You gotta put your mind in the book of Leviticus. The whole point of Leviticus is being holy, being pure, to learn God is holy, we are not. What separates us from God? And so this idea of sin on a boy, it's in. When you have a girl, she sins, but in her future, she will birth a child and they will sin. So it's requiring the parents, the mother and the father, to think about how sin affects the family generation and generation. This is not a bad thing. This is not a curse. When you read chapter 12, it's not that God doesn't like girls and he likes boys better. It has nothing to do with any of that. It all has to do with the purity and the sin of how it's going to go down throughout the generations. Now you would ask yourself, where in the world is Jesus in this chapter, right? You'd be like, man, this is about pregnancy and just kind of some nastiness. Where is Jesus at? Well, here's what's interesting about this, right? Go back to the first two verses, right? He says, if a woman conceives and bears a male child, she will be unclean for 7 days. As at that time of her menstruation, she shall be unclean. And on the 8th day, the flesh of the foreskin shall be circumcised. If you remember, when Jesus was born by Mary, even though he was sinless, he could not sin, he was circumcised like all the other boys. He took on sin, right? And so what happens in this, that Mary for 7 days was unclean. On the 8th day, it says that they took him to the temple to be circumcised. So she kept this law, Mary kept this law, and Jesus kept the law by being circumcised. And then she goes back home for 33 days. And at those 33 days is when we see Simon, we see some of these people that come and talk to her in this fashion, right? So this whole 40 days or 80 days is exactly what we call today. What do we call it today? When a mom gets pregnant and she stays home from work, right? You got to think, because she's unclean. So because she's unclean, she can't go to the market. She can't go to the temple. She can't do certain things that are her normal job. So it's a built-in way at the beginning of Israel through Scripture to give mom and baby 40 days or 80 days of some alone time, of just bonding time, of her getting out of some of her chores and duties that she would normally have that she could spend with her child. So this whole thing evolves around purity and realizing what is holy and what is not. God is holy, we are not. The idea of blood, the life force, because blood is spilt, there needs to be some purification. And then also, this is a rule and a law set in Israel's customs that it would give time for mom and baby to unite and to come together and be one, right? Have this idea of just giving them some one-on-one time. And so, we see that Mary and Jesus went through this, and they continue to do this. So this idea of sin and what is to come is prevalent in this purity section of 11 through 15. Hope that makes sense on this really weird chapter, and we'll see you tomorrow in chapter 13. God bless.